Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
We're not playing Can You Top This? Before I say another word, I want to thank George, who is not here, for inviting me to come here and speak. It is a privilege. My name is Vince, and I'm a brown bag alcoholic. And you know, I never started out to become an alcoholic. In fact, when I was quite young, I'd been instilled with the idea that alcoholics are like bananas, born green, turn yellow, and die rotten. It took me a long time to figure out there was some truth to that. And I got pretty well to the overripe stage, I think, before I finally quit. But I was born just like most people are, and grew up rather slowly because I was moving around the country a lot. My parents were in the music business and traveled all over the place, teaching at this school and that school and working on their degrees and whatever. As a result, I didn't put down roots and get long-term friends my own age. And I was put in with a bunch of adults and learned big words which didn't set well. I became a brat, and I deserved all the crap I got from the kids. And then to compound it, my dad was sent to Paris for a year when I was very small, and I was put in a French school, and they didn't speak any English and I didn't speak any French. So I learned the best I could as a small kid. But that was a long time ago, and to give you some ghostly idea of how long ago it was, I remember seeing the Queen Mary at sea on her maiden voyage when we came back to the States. So that'll date me. At any rate, I mentioned that because I came back with a French accent. And then I moved to New England, so here I am with a French accent in rural New England. And then I got sent to the South, so I had a French accent on top of a New England accent that didn't fit in with an Alabama accent. So I got kidded a lot. I went through a lot of hell. And I had a great case of the poor me's. And that went on for years, and I was a very unhappy kid. So I turned to solitary things, walks in the woods, drawing, reading. I'd go to the library and come back with stacks of books and buried myself in the other worlds. But when I hit high school, then came the revelation. I got in with a bunch of kids that taught me what a six-pack of beer in the back of a car in a drive-in movie was all about. I discovered girls. And I found that all three or four of those things all went together. The beer, the movies, the car, and it was heaven. At last I could fit in because I had a little beer or wine or something to wet my palate, to make me feel okay, make me fit in with the rest of the kids. And it was great. So my life began to change. I began to outgrow the loneliness that I had as a kid. And I went on to college and majored in physics of all things, which wasn't exactly what I really wanted to do, but it was something that I kind of got pushed into, and went ahead and partied, and I know now that alcohol became an ever-increasing part of my partying. I wouldn't go out with a girl if she didn't drink, and I like to go to parties where drinking was involved. The drinks, the music, the excitement, fraternity parties and the like. I wasn't a fraternity member, but I sure loved to go to fraternity parties. After graduation, which was not in the Los Angeles area, it was in Portland, Oregon, I came down to Los Angeles to sit on the beach and wait till I got drafted. But I didn't get drafted, and my money started to run out, so I had to get a job, and so I did. I got a job in aerospace, and through luck, in spite of my drinking, in spite of everything that happened, I was able to ride that aerospace train to the bitter end. And although I went through some periods of layoffs, I managed to stay employed in aerospace for a good long time, while a lot of people left aerospace and wound up driving taxi cab. So I was very lucky. So drinking became an ever larger part of my life. We'd go out after work, go hit a bar, play pinball machines, shuffleboard, drink the beer and talk the talk. We'd go to a field station where we shot off missiles and things and have big monster parties, worked long hours. I spent a year in New Mexico at field station duty where we were doing weapons research. And it was a very lonely, lonely time because there weren't any single gals around. There were the Spanish element in town that wouldn't have anything to do with us because we were from the coast. There were the regular townspeople who didn't want anything to do with the transients, and we were temporary. And the Mescalero Apaches, we didn't really want a lot to do with them. And so the guys that were single went down to Juarez and whooped it up. And they thought a good night was having a hooker on each arm going up the street followed by a mariachi band. And for some reason that really wasn't quite my cup of tea. Rather, I saved my money, and when I got back to Los Angeles, I was in good shape to buy a nice new car and go out and have some fun. And I had fun all right. I found a lovely young lady and got married because I wanted to solve my dating problems. And I solved my dating problems. Turned out that I married a mommy. And she took the pants off me and put them on herself. She was a very controlling individual. And since my pattern was to go to work and put a lot into it, and I did well at work, and then come home, have a few drinks, and mellow out, when she'd get on my case, it was very easy for me to say, okay, peace, go do your thing. I give up. Go do whatever you want to do. As a result, she chose my clothes. She told us where to live. I think she would have called up my work and got into that business if she could have. So the marriage very quickly turned sour. And it was bicker, fight, and drink. Thank you very much. I think I need Drano. At any rate, very gradually the pattern of my drinking changed. As there was a lot of fighting and the kids came, my life consisted of do my work and maybe a lot of overtime, come home, buy a bottle, go out to the garage, do my chores, sit there and watch TV and stay out of the house, stay out of harm's way, and stay out of arguments. And I did more and more of that. And gradually the friends started to fall away. We didn't entertain much anymore. They couldn't stand her, to tell the truth. And of course my drinking didn't help any, but then I wasn't really an alcoholic at that point, but I was certainly moving in that direction. As a result, the end phase of that, my wife showed signs of some mental problems, and I'm not in a position to blame her for my drinking. I used it as an excuse to drink. But I think my whole family background, the way I was raised, all the little things that happened to me in life, and some inner disposition that I had made the drinking inevitable. And I just used her as an excuse. Anyway, came that horrible day when I was drinking on a daily basis. I would sometimes leave work early because my nerves would get too frayed, go buy a bottle suck on it on the way home. I couldn't go home early because I wasn't expected to be home early, and that would mean a fight if I got home early. I would drink at night. I would get up at 2 in the morning and go out to the garage and watch test patterns on TV and laugh at them and drink. It became an almost around-the-clock thing. I'd get up in the morning, and I'd know I have some presentation to make it work, and yet I couldn't go in with booze on my breath. And it was hell, doing that little dance of balancing the drinking and the periods of non-drinking to hang on to the job and to do well. And gradually my world started to shrink. And then came the day when I got my first 502. I had the pattern of going out to my car at noon and getting a bottle of vodka and some peanuts and a little can of beer. Well, if I had the can of beer and some peanuts and then went into work, that's okay, because you have peanuts and beer at lunch. No, on the vodka. So I'd drink the vodka, have the beer and some peanuts, and that would be okay. Then I'd get off early in the afternoon, reach under the seat of my car, finish off the vodka, and go home. But that's one occasion I overshot the mark, and the highway patrol picked me up on Canaan Road and took me off to jail. And I had my first 502. That kind of woke me up a little bit, and I knew I was an alcoholic. I didn't know anything about the steps of the program. I'd really never heard of the program. But I knew that I was helpless and hopelessly drunk. I knew that I'd worked really steps 1, 2, 3 in reverse. I turned my will and my life over to the power of alcohol. So I had to go to drunk driving school, and I went to that. And I listened to what they had to say without really understanding it. Got out of there, headed for the liquor store, got a bottle, and drove home. Well, I didn't quite get the message. But then no one would really explain it to me, and I don't think I was ready to listen. But then my drinking got so bad that I began to get really worried about it. I couldn't stand the sight of my face in the mirror. I was hiding bottles in the bushes. The wife would start scouring around, looking in the bushes, looking in my car, and stealing my bottles and taking them away. And then I'd go reach for the bottle, which I had to have for medicine, and it wouldn't be there. And I would get desperate. I would shoplift bottles if I had to. So I knew that I was on that downward spiral, and I was afraid that it might end someplace I would not like. So came the day that my wife did one thing that I will never ever forget. The one positive thing that came out of that marriage. She found out about Alcoholics Anonymous and found out where there was a meeting. We lived in Malibu at the time, in Paradise Cove, and she found out about a meeting and dragged me by my pink little ear and took me to the meeting and went inside, and the meeting had already started. But she came out all red-faced and stiff-legged and said, "They won't let me stay, but they want you to come in." So I walked into the meeting to see what it was all about, and it turned out to be the Malibu Women's Stag. Well, they let me stay. And right then I learned one of the most important lessons of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that was acceptance. You see, for the last several years before that, I had gotten the shakes. I blamed it on breathing paint fumes, but it wasn't. And then I knew it was from the alcohol. But it got so bad that I would have difficulty going up and down stairs or crossing the street, and I certainly couldn't sign my name if you were watching or pick up a glass or a cup of coffee in front of someone else. My hand would shake too badly. So this was really hell in an engineering department, where sometimes you have to go into restricted areas and you have to sign your name on a log. Or sometimes you're with a customer and they say, "Go get me a cup of coffee," and you have to invent an excuse for why you can't do that, because I would have spilled it all over the guy. At any rate, when I went into that Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, they handed me a cup of coffee that was half full. And as my hand shook, they laughed at me. And I took it. And I laughed with them. And I felt that feeling of acceptance. I was among people who knew exactly how I felt, who had been the same place that I had been. And I'll never ever forget that I felt at peace with that. At any rate, they didn't give me the hard sell on AA. They gave me a list of phone numbers of people who lived close by, and I think maybe a meeting directory and the 20 questions, and that was about it, because they knew I was very fragile and about to run out the door. Well, there's no way that I would go back to any more AA meetings. After all, my wife had put me up to it, and I wasn't going to do what anyone told me to do, least of all my wife. But I didn't throw that stuff away. I kept the numbers and I kept the literature. And come Thanksgiving Day, later that year, I felt absolute desperation. The little world that I lived in had shrunk down to one little floor tile, and I couldn't stand where I was anymore. And the phone call was made. Now, I don't know whether I made the phone call or whether she made the phone call, but people came and 12-stepped the living hell out of me and took me over to their home on Thanksgiving Day where they were having a party going. And that party consisted of members of AA that would be like the who's who of AA. You'd know half the names of people that were there. And they gave me coffee, they gave me orange juice, they gave me honey. They took me on 4 or 5 walks that afternoon and listened to me babble about my wife and how nobody understands me and all that good stuff, and searched my car for booze and made me promise to go with them to an AA meeting that Saturday. Well, that Saturday, AA took me to the Malibu Saturday night meeting, and they said, now there's the podium up there, Vince. I want you to take this up there when they call your name and go up and read this from the podium. Okay. I was anxious to do anything, and it was chapter 5. So I had to go up there like 2 days sober, up to the podium and read chapter 5, and you mean it isn't all on this page? And I read it with great drama, and everybody knew I was a quaking newcomer, and my blood pressure shot up to 500, and my pulse was doing 9,000, and I thought I would faint at the podium, but somehow I got through it. And I felt a little feeling of belonging, and I vowed to keep coming back, and I started coming back. But I had an awful time staying away from the booze. You see, I had set up many, many years of habitual drinking, and it was getting close to Christmas time. And so I had some little slippy poos. Actually, I asked for them, I'm sure, but I planned them. I just couldn't give it up. And it wasn't a fun thing at all. It was like medicine. The emotions were killing me, the fights at home, the horror of doing that little dance. At any rate, a week after New Year's, I had a fight at home, what else is new, and I was living in Paradise Cove at the time, went down to the parking lot, finished off a little bit of vodka that I had, and decided I needed some more. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, no liquor stores up there were open, so I drove all the way to Santa Monica, down to Venice, where I knew a liquor store was open, got a jug, came out of a blackout heading towards downtown LA and said, I better get home. And I started heading up the Coast Highway, and one more time comes the guy with his bubblegum machine going, hauls me off to the Malibu Slammer, and I stayed there and enjoyed the meatloaf that came from the Malibu drugstore. And I had the pleasure of calling home to my daughter and saying, guess where I am? She says, yes, we know, you're in jail again. Boy, that really makes you feel good. I had a .39 on that arrest, and that was after being hauled all the way up the Coast Highway to the Slammer. So I had a pretty good load on. Well, I weathered that storm. I got out of it. I got sentenced to Clare and spent a year with getting my little court card signed. At least that's what it was supposed to do, go in every week for counseling, see movies, and go to AA meetings and get my little court thing signed. But this time, things kind of took. I had gotten out of jail, and I had gone knocking on the door of the people that had 12-stepped me that first time, and they gave me tough love. They said, Vince, When you decide to quit playing games and knock off this booze, we'll help you. But until then, go on and suck on your bottle someplace else. Get out of here. So I went walking down the road, and I was crying. AA has forsaken me, you know. AA doesn't want anything to do with me, and somebody called me by name that I hadn't worn out, and I got 12-stepped one more time. And he took me down to Alice's restaurant to meet his sponsor, and his sponsor told me, Vince, if you want to break this cycle, you've got to go to meetings as often as you drank. I said, but I go to these meetings up here in Malibu and once down at Clare. No, Vince, you've got to go every day if you were drinking every day. And that's what I started to do. I started going to noon meetings. At that time, I was working in the Valley, and so I would go to the Hole in the Sky, and I had the pleasure of meeting Jim Ryan there, that was his home meeting, and he was a saint as far as I'm concerned. His favorite expression of life is in session, get it on, you know. And then I would drive over the San Diego freeway, come down into Santa Monica, go down to Clare and do my little session there. And then I had to hit every meeting in town. I went to St. Augustine's. I had a commitment at Friday night St. Augustine's and mopping the floor. And I got there early and helped set up and do coffee. I went to 26th and Broadway and asked them about a meeting down in Venice, and they told me, well, ain't any meetings down in Venice that you need to go to. The only meetings you got down there underneath the pier. But I found Beyond Baroque, and I found some good people there in Sunday Noon, Ohio. And at one time I had the coffee commitment there, making coffee for Sunday Noon, Ohio, the 500 cups of coffee they drank every noon. In short, I started playing the game. It meant I would go to meetings. I had a sponsor. I took direction. I needed it. I was still having problems at home, but I still had a little slippy poo problem. But they became fewer and fewer in number. One of them especially I will never forget was one that I don't think that I was responsible for. I was just short of 90 days, and I came home from work, and I looked in my bed, and there was a pile of bottles on the middle of my bed, and I said to the family, where did these come from? Oh, these are the bottles that we had found in your car and in the bushes. We saved them up for you. We thought we'd give them back to you now. So I picked up the bottles, shoved them in a paper bag, and jammed them in a closet, and I took off for a walk. Well, when I got back from my walk and went in to sit down at the dinner table, they had made a centerpiece arrangement out of those bottles. Well, some of the bottles were not empty, but I took care of that and emptied them. So that was one of my last slips. So that one I don't blame on me. Around Memorial Day weekend, I think a week after Memorial Day, somewhere in there, I was at home, and I felt, and the family had gone someplace, and I had this great need for a drink. And I learned one of the little lessons about how perverse alcoholism is. I knew I was supposed to call someone before I drank, and so I made some phone calls, but to people that I was sure would not be home, because I didn't want them to talk me out of it. I knew that I had to have a drink, just a little bit of something, because my nerves were just on the ragged edge. So I got in my car and I went up to the liquor store and I bought half a pint. And I came home with that half a pint, but before I got home, it was gone. So I had to turn around and go back to the liquor store to get another half pint so I could have one when I got home. As a result, I wound up passed out on the front steps of our home down in Paradise Cove. Not a shrewd thing to do. But that was my last drink. After that, something happened. I don't know what it was, whether I suddenly became teachable or I'd suddenly worn out all the feelings that I had and they'd become numb, or I had enough people rooting for me, but I was not to take another drink. It didn't mean I felt good. I ate all kinds of candy bars. I took all kinds of long walks. I did everything necessary. I'd call people. I'd go to meetings and go out to coffee with them afterwards. I'd go to meetings early and start helping set up anything to keep busy. At that time, they had a little restaurant over the Marina Center upstairs, and I would go there in the middle of the afternoon and hang out and drink coffee and whatever and just talk to people. Just talk. And somehow I found that these urges that I had to drink got less and less and less. The more I became involved with the program and with people, the better I felt about it. My main meeting at that time, one of them was the Malibu Saturday night meeting. And I went to it very religiously because that was the meeting that I was first introduced to when I had to do Chapter 5. And then one day the secretary says, I can't make it next weekend. Would you set up the meeting for me? Honor. So I was glad to do that. But this started happening more and more often. And then pretty soon he wasn't around at all. And I would still go there early, set up the meeting, make the coffee, clean up the ashtrays and stuff afterwards. And after a few months had gone by, I went to the steering committee and say, hey, you guys, it's about time you did something because the secretary's got a divorce and he's gone. You need to get a new secretary. So the steering committee went off in the corner and caucused, took a vote, and came back and said, Vince, you're it. Says, well, it's a one-year term. Yeah, well, this term starts now. But I've already been doing it for a couple of months. Doesn't matter. The term starts now. So here I was, just a few months sober, and I was made secretary of the Malibu Saturday night meeting. And I did that for about 60 weeks. And I never missed a meeting. We moved from Paradise Cove back to Santa Monica, a whole bunch of different addresses. The curse of that marriage is that we made 7 full-scale moving van moves in 5 years. Everything from Malibu to Santa Monica to Venice to Huntington Beach, and it was a real killer. But I did not miss a single meeting, even though we had fires, the Malibu fire, we had the Big Rock slide, floods, road blockage. I would go the valley and come over Canaan Dune to get to that Malibu meeting. Sometimes we only had 10 people at the meeting and set up a card table and had a meeting. But I made it. It was just kind of an honor. And when I finally got my AA birthday, they had a big party for me. And I just couldn't believe it, that people cared that much. At first I thought this idea of birthdays was a bunch of hooey. That's old lady stuff. Go up there and have a birthday, yeah. Oh boy, big deal. Yet when it came my turn and I stood up in front of a meeting, actually the place where I took my first cake was the Beyond Baroque meeting in Venice. It was my first birthday cake. And the tears were streaming down. I could not believe it. I had such a feeling of emotion that I had actually made a year. Someone like me who had been drinking for all these years, for the right reason, for the wrong reason, who tried and tried a million times to quit drinking without success, who felt all the hopelessness and despair, felt like my life was at an end and nothing would ever get better. For me to get sober was just an accomplishment beyond belief. So things had to change. The guys on the program told me, you got a problem with your wife. They called us up on the steering committee and said that AA is taking too much of my time. What if she threw away the literature and smashed the coffee worms? Would they fire me from AA because so I'd devote more time to the family? And they said, Vince, it's time for a new ball game. And I agreed, and so I instituted divorce proceedings, but I didn't do it until after my first year. I had to wait and make sure what portion of the problem was my problem and what portion of the problem might be her problem. I had to sort those out, and I had to go through the steps far enough that I could take enough of an inventory that I knew that I was doing the right thing, not just running away from something. And so I got a divorce from that lady and left her free to go off and find a new Mr. Wonderful, which she has not done, but that's a whole other story. I had kids, and at first we had problems because I was the big drunk of the family, and I had broken up the family, and it took quite a while for things to swing around again. Today, I am in one of the best places I've ever been in my life. I can't believe the good fortune that I have. I have good, warm relationships with my children. and I respect their space without getting into their space. Their lives of their own, and they're free to do what they want to do, and I let them. And they let me do what I want to do. As a result, when I have a birthday in the family, we get together for any of the kids' birthday. We get together at holidays. Even on 4th of July, sometimes we get together. It's close, and yet it's not close. And I'm very, very fortunate. I live in a little house down in Venice by myself. My son does body and fender work out and back. I have plenty of room to make my own messes without anybody judging me. And I've learned a little bit about relationships, and that was very hard for me, because I always used to wonder about, what about these relationships you have? You meet someone, you date for a while, you become real cuddly, and all of a sudden you break up and you're not speaking anymore. Weren't you friends? Weren't you best buddies? And of course I had to learn a hard lesson that a romance isn't a friendship. That you meet someone and what it is infatuation and it's lust. And you haven't learned to be friends. And so when the infatuation goes away, you're left with nothing because you've never formed a friendship. And so what have you got to talk about? So you won't even be recognized anymore. You're just that guy you used to go out with, and it's okay. You see, I'd been married for a long, long time to that Miss Wonderful, and I'd gotten out of touch with what it was like to be in a loving situation with another human being. I had to learn how to date, how to be social all over again, and I did it by going to lots of meetings, helping out at meetings, going to panels, going to these deals in Palm Springs, and all the activities I possibly could. I got involved with Felicity House, was on their board, used to set up and do their dances. For years I did that, bought all the refreshments and did that. And learned how to live again and relax in my own skin. Today, as I said, I have my own little house. I'm gratefully retired from aerospace and wonder how I ever had time to do any work. I'm in a relationship with a neat lady person who came to be with me tonight, Peggy. We've been together nearly 8 years now, 7.5 years. And I'm able to do things now that I'd always wanted to do, but never was able to do before. And that means have freedom to do my little projects, some artwork stuff that I like to do, and without having to please anyone or be accountable for it. And to take trips. We've taken a lot of nice trips. We went to Paris a few years ago, and I was able, because of having been there as a kid, to remember even the street that I used to live on, and went to visited the little school that I was at, which is unbelievable. And end of September, we're going off to London and spend some time there. In the spring, we were off to Washington and Williamsburg. So we do stuff. We have fun. We live a little, because we know that our time here is limited. Enjoy it while you can. Now, my recipe is simple. It's in the big book. You get a sponsor, because a sponsor is someone that you give permission to tell you things you may not want to hear. And a sponsor is not God. So don't expect them to rule your life or tell you to do things that is not within their area of expertise. It's like someone who is a pimply-faced old lady who never had a relationship in her life, trying to go into the business as a marriage counselor. It's kind of like asking a Catholic priest to tell you about the sexual practices. It just doesn't work. At any rate, the statement is made, shoemakers, stick to your last. Know your business. If you're going to be a sponsor, know that you're in a very, very honored position. And don't try to tell a person to do things that you don't know something about. Don't play God. Stick with the program. Help them to stay sober within your own experience. I did my inventory. It was tough. It took me a long time to write about all the painful things in my life, because my little talk only touches on some of the things, from child abuse that I was subjected to, my father remarried to a rather unkind lady that I learned to hate with a passion, almost as bad as my wife. But I found out that everyone follows a different drummer, and you don't have to follow that drummer. Take each friendship to the degree that it is comfortable for you, and then drop it. Don't have to let their standard of life influence your standard of living. In other words, to thine own self be true. Do the inventory. I had to do it twice. The first one I did was fine, but he said, Vince, you got to go back and write about anger. And I had to write about anger. Now, my method of doing inventory is different from another person's. You can follow the big book. I preferred a little different path where I wrote down things that bothered me, problems in my life, things that influenced my life, things that I was ashamed of, secrets that I had that were bugging me. And a shared secret isn't a secret, and once it's shared, it can't hurt you. So I was very glad to give my inventory for a guy who could say, Vince, you may feel that these are terrible things that you did, but I did the same damn thing. And somehow it took the guilt away and the sting away. And it was confession with absolution. The absolution of sharing something you did with someone who understood where you were coming from. And really, that's all the program is about. So today, I am free of guilt. That's the big thing. Free of guilt, because I do not sneak a drink. I do not steal from people. I don't try to hurt people anymore. There are times when I can have a sarcastic, vicious tongue, and I enjoy the hell out of that. But that may be one of my character defects that I'm not ready to give up yet. But I'm just glad to be here and glad to be alive. Early on, I met a guy down in the Hermosa Beach area. I used to go to noontime meetings down at the Hermosa Beach Club at their old location. And there was a guy named Bill Meyer that I met down there. His name is Serenity Sam. And he was always special to me, although he was not my sponsor. And the main reason I liked him is because he had a gift of reducing everything that was hurtful to some kind of a joke. Make something cute out of it. To take the hurtful things in your life and make you able to laugh at them. And he taught me the only way you can look at misfortune is with a little humor. That's why you hear these sick jokes from the podium. I ran into this lady and I caught her on the bumper of my car. And everybody laughs. It's not that it's funny. It's just because you can get through the pain. You know that you've done your inventory and you've paid your penance for the things that you've done. Now if you can laugh at them a little bit, not in a hurtful way, laugh at yourself if you will. It takes the sting of it away and allows you to move ahead. They say that when you take your inventory, you close the door on your past, but you leave it open just a crack so you can see where you have been and don't want to go back to. Seeing through that door that's just a little bit open makes it possible for you to go forward with a clear conscience and enjoy the next day that's coming. And with that, I think I've said quite enough. Thank you for listening.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control is connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside. Then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down. And then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.